Welcome to episode 13 of This Week in the Pentecostal Evangel. My name is Lisa Millen, and I'm the church history professor here at AGTS.
I'm Jason Sprinkle. I work at the Preaching Center here at AGTS.
And I'm Bob Eby, and I teach in the areas of biblical studies and preaching here at the seminary. And if you've been enjoying This Week in the Pentecostal Evangel, we would so appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and share this content with others who might find this walk down the path of Pentecostal history valuable and enjoyable. So we're excited to engage with this edition from April 3rd, 1937. So I'm curious, Jason, do you have anything you pulled out of this edition?
I do. Before I begin, though, I do want to thank Lisa, Dr. Millen. Another enjoyable selection. I have no idea how you choose all of these for every different week that we've done.
It's kind of random.
But this was another great edition. I really enjoyed these older editions of the Pentecostal Evangel. E.S. Williams is the general superintendent at this point. He's been in for a little while. And we probably should mention that Dr. Wadholm, Rick, is not with us in this episode. Yeah. He's just become a grandfather again.
For the fourth
time. Yeah, Grandpa Rick.
So congratulations to the entire Wadholm family.
I know. I don't know if we can say, maybe we shouldn't say the name because maybe that hasn't been announced yet. But I will say it's another girl.
Yes.
So
very exciting.
Another Wadholm has been released on the world.
We love our friend Rick, and we're celebrating this wonderful milestone in their family. We're with him.
So the cover article is by Gail F. Lewis from Central Bible Institute in Springfield, Missouri. I believe that Brother William Snow Evans is the president of CBI at this point.
CBI.
The article is titled "Holiness and Efficiency," and it reads to me as a sermon.
Oh, no doubt it's a sermon.
Now, he's in this sermon, based loosely on Matthew 28, 19, and 20. Gail Lewis it's a classic Pentecostal sermon.
Very much so.
He's telling the story of a sermon that he was hearing in Michigan that he witnessed and the results of that sermon. But here's what I loved about it. The entire article is framed on the cover with these two Bible verses, one from 1 Peter 1 and Revelation 22, both of them dealing with holiness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this article, even though it sort of has 3 points, like a classic Pentecostal sermon, it really has just 1 point, and then at the end he tacks on his other 2 points, and he kind of loses track of his counting throughout this, I think.
Because, I would challenge the valuation of this being 3 points.
Yeah.
I would say he really has 4.
We had an argument about this before we started filming.
And you have the right to be wrong.
That's true. I do. But what I appreciated about this was it reads like a classic Pentecostal sermon, but he has a strong emphasis on personal holiness. Mm-hmm. And that is who we are at our roots, right? The coming of the Holy Spirit, it's not just for power, but he is the Holy Spirit. And he produces holiness in our lives. And I really did love... I loved that. There were some things in this that I found a little problematic. He seems to equate anointing with personal success, which I found...
Well, and failure with sin.
Yes, right.
Actually...
To state it in the negative, I guess.
I very much do appreciate the call to holiness, of course. And you know what? I do think it's possible that the Lord lifts his blessings if we persist in willful. He doesn't always, because we've seen sinful people be used.
And that's the tension that we wrestle with.
But I think you definitely can't go the other way. You cannot say, because you are not seeing by outward measures, numeric, financial, popularity,
grades, if you're a Bible school student, which he illustrates it at the beginning of the article.
You cannot equate that with, I think you have to be very careful to then sin. Project and go, well, there may be sin in your life, which is also, frankly, a pretty Pentecostal thing to do.
It is. And that's what, I didn't love everything about this article, but it was in that sense.
It felt like us,
I wanted
again.
to highlight it. Yeah, it's a classic Pentecostal approach. So it was a neat it was a neat glimpse, I thought.
Yeah.
Another one that I do want to point out, there were so many. This is it'll become sort of a regular piece in the Evangel for a while, because our next episode will be from 1953, and the same thing is there. It's called The Passing and the Permanent, a review of current life and thought in light of scriptures. And it's got the same heading, 20, not quite 20 years later. But there was one I loved. I just loved this. It's called, there were a number of things here. I think Lisa's going to talk about one of them, but this one is called No Hope But Christ. Dr. French Oliver writes, and I just like the language, I may be as old-fashioned as a hoop skirt, but I believe man is composed of spirit, soul, and body. Oh. And then he goes on later, he talks about there's no Tolstoy in Russia, no Pericles in Greece, no Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, which I don't know that we should mourn. No Solomon in Palestine, no Talleyrand in France. The Jazz Age has produced jazz political ninny hammers who are mere opportunists, adventurers, and who stand for one thing only, and that is election. So he's making a political point.
Yeah, he is.
And
ninny hammers. I'm sorry, I'm lost. You lost me at ninny hammers.
I'll tell you, I think we have a bunch of ninny hammers who only care about personal aggrandizement today as well. So he says, and this I think is relevant to today's political climate. Our hope, however, does not rest in passing politicians, but upon the coming Christ. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come and will not tarry. And a good reminder in our political moment.
Amen.
So there were other things that I could mention. There was a great article from the Field. I don't know what I'm taking now. I'm probably going on too long.
Oh, you just go ahead.
But you'll let me know if I've gone. Well, Lisa
There's
won't.
a lot to
Lisa
cover.
won't let me know if
Oh
I've gone too long.
I'm
But-
friendly today.
But Bob will.
Still holding the
So
grudge.
Lillian Trasher writes a letter essentially to the Evangel, and I loved this. She's just had a lovely visit from Brother Welch, Brother and Sister Williams, Brother Perkin, Miss Hattie Hammond, and Brother Crouch. What a visit to Egypt, to the Lillian Trasher's orphanage.
And it was really encouraging to her.
Yep.
Yeah.
And somebody, so one of those ladies on the tour, at the end saw babies playing in the nursery yard, noticed that there were many flies, and she gave $50. So this is 1937.
Yeah.
$50 is not
a lot of money.
an insubstantial amount of money.
No, it's a lot of money.
For a screened-in playroom. And you know what occurred to me is we sometimes, and I can be among them, undervalue a short-term missions trip.
Sure.
But one of the values that does come out of a short-term missions trip is that people see firsthand the needs on the field and give a little more generously to that. $50 is not, in the same article, same edition of the Evangel, they'll go through missions giving, and whole churches maybe gave $12 for that month.
Or 56 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here's somebody gives $50 to screen in a playroom for some orphans in Egypt.
Yeah,
and I found that compelling.
100%. And, and we do. We're moved when we see need. And we tend to be moved, especially in our community, when we see need in a global sense.
Yes.
No doubt. I appreciate the fact that we don't do a lot. Lisa gives us these evangels and we read them individually, and we pick what we want to talk about. We don't do a lot of advanced work on this together.
No, it's fresh.
Yeah, so we're reacting that
Did I
way.
steal
So
your article?
yeah, so one of the things that we do right before we go on though is like, hey, which one are you going to deal with? So we make sure we don't. And when Jason chose his 4, he only told me about 1, and he's taken all of my other 3. So I'll make it work. But that's okay.
He did mention that he was going to do like 30. He said, I have like 30 things.
I
thought he was kidding.
I really liked this edition of the Pentecostal Evangel. It's 90 years ago, and it's really compelling.
We know how much you liked it.
Well, I could give you another one.
No, we can stop here.
All right, it was going to be a shot at the way we do missions today.
Oh, now I'm interested. Go ahead, Lisa.
No.
No. I don't want to hear from you. But I would...
Again, you can't start to say something and not finish it. You can't say something provocative and then go, oh, never mind. I'm not going to say it.
This will be the episode that everyone remembers because it's where we end in a fist fight.
Oh, yes.
Actually, we at the seminary love each other.
We do. Are you not telling us? That's it? We're just moving on.
Well, leave some on the table for me because I may jump on some. Go ahead, Lisa.
All right. Well, I enjoyed this article, addition as well, I wanted to point out a couple of things. One thing I noticed as I read through this is the incredible number of women evangelists and pastors. So I made a list. So these are the women. I'm just going to read them out because, for one thing, I feel like their names deserve to be heard. Right? These are women. First of all, I'm going to read the women evangelists. Blanche Britton, Mildred Westerland, Clara Klassen, Willa Short, Verna Strong, Mrs. E. Reckley, Zella Anthony, Etta McCaskill, Mabel Willett, Pearl Herndon, Mrs. Grace Cook, Elma Hodgson, and Blanche Novak. So these are women evangelists, and they list... It comes in this list of here are evangelistic services, right? These meetings that have been held. And they say things like, we had such a great turnout, or wonderful, this person led us into this wonderful experience with the Lord. And then they give the evangelist's name. And even for someone like Mrs. E. Reckley, it's just her. There's no husband mentioned, right? And I feel like evangelist was a wonderful opportunity for these women. And in fact, where there's a list of one of these women, I don't remember which, is saying, I want to get out on the mission, on the evangelistic field. And she says, I come with a lot of pastoral experience, and I've got some good recommendations from the headquarters. So let me know, she says, because I want to give my life for this.
And so you get the sense, right, that it was easier in 1937, 90 years ago, almost 90 years ago, for a female evangelist to book services than it would be in 2026, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
And probably a greater number of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long list for, this wasn't a very long edition either. And then we've got, I loved this one, I didn't mention her, but Sister Lloyd Shearer is the speaker, and her husband will show the pictures. So I loved that. And then just to note other women in here, Alice Luce, who's just a phenomenal writer. She's got
so
an article.
In the fellowship's
and then
history.
we've got two.
And it seems like an ongoing article.
Right. Yes. We hear from her often. And then we've got, of course, female missionaries, Lillian Trasher, who you mentioned. And
I was
then,
going to.
Miss Jeannie Carlson, who's a missionary. But then we've got two female pastors. So Sister Danforth is the pastor at Lyons, New York, and Mrs. Beatrice Martin is the pastor at Slayton, Texas. And it just says, here's where this revival happened. This is the evangelist, but this is the pastor, and then it gives the woman's name,
I love
right?
that.
And just her, not Mrs. and Mr. or Reverend and Mrs.
You know what's interesting, and I hope somebody will. In one of our previous episodes, I mentioned a woman minister in my growing up years who was very old when I grew up in church as a little kid. And she'd given me this wonderful encouragement. And I'd mentioned her name, Ada Aldine. Adolf and Ada Aldine were the couple. And so I just mentioned that in the article or in the episode. And somebody commented that they were... that she had come to faith in a revival in Minnesota. At the comment was at the famous casino revival in the 1920s in Minnesota, and so we are still within living history and memory. You've done this a couple times, Jason, with people, but that list of names, I
would love to know.
Certain there are people whose families and
touched.
lives were impacted by some of these women evangelists. And that name is not just a name that passed across the page here, but was pivotal in some church or in some family's Pentecostal experience.
Right. Someone's
We'd
life
love to
was
hear from you.
changed.
Absolutely.
Right?
That was really one of the great joys, was to see that little note. I'm like, get out of here. And I still need to engage more, because I'd like to know, how does he know? Because, I mean, obviously the person who commented on that was not present in the 1920s. I mean, I guess Well, no. If he was
Yeah,
present, he wasn't paying attention
Right.
because he was only a year or two old and he's in his hundreds now. But still, how has that story been passed on? I love that.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
love
we're
it
doing
too,
this.
because this history, right? It's our history, but it filters down, right? Our lives were impacted.
And continues to make impact.
Yes, and continues to make impact. I wanted to mention one. Are you talking about
No, go
this
ahead.
article?
Take it all
I
the
don't
way.
wanna-
Take it.
Are you
No,
talking
I
about
didn't do that one.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
So
So we get more than one article now? Is that what we're doing?
You did
you
4.
did.
Oh.
You did.
You did
Justin.
I've already
4.
forgotten.
So, all right, and there's only 3 of us today, so we've got more to share. So we've got this article here by Donald Gee on singing in the Spirit. So he's talking about this phenomenon, this mystic phenomenon
yes.
of everyone spontaneously in a meeting beginning to sing in the Spirit. And it's a kind of a long article, and I won't note all of it, but some things that stood out to me. For one thing, he says you have to experience it to understand it. Like, you just won't get it unless you come and you experience it. And then another thing that he says is just as spontaneously as it starts, it will stop spontaneously. But, and I love this line.
And those are, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because those are interesting perspectives. Because sometimes as Pentecostals, we'll take digs. John MacArthur was famous about this type of thing, right? That he would attack us because so much of what we did was based in an experience.
Yeah.
But Pentecostalism is experiential.
Oh, it is experiential.
And we don't need to back away from the fact that we are experiencing things in the moving of God.
Absolutely. And, you know, of course, we talk about this all the time in church history. We were just talking about this the other day about, you know, Pentecostalism is unique. It really is unique, and that's another episode, but sometime we can talk about that. But here's the last thing I want to mention about this, and that is if you come with a carnal spirit and you think you're going to join in, your voice won't sound good and you're going to mess up the whole thing. So either join for real or just listen. So I thought that was
Probably not bad
interesting.
advice.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right, Bob.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, Bob?
Yeah.
Well, there's not much left.
There's a lot.
So on page 7, there's a very bottom of the right-hand column, a line, or a little article, an excerpt from a pastor from Scotland called it's designated as the open-eyed pessimist.
And remember, this is 1937.
1937. So we're in the build-up to World War II. Hitler's in power. Mussolini's in power. You have all of this happening, and it's all kind of mentioned. And the last line is, war will come. Germany is ready for revenge. Russia will defend and is seeking to spread her godless system. Italy, the fascists there. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff happening. It's very predictive of what's ultimately going to happen in a matter of in some ways months.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though our involvement doesn't really start till 41, but the world was about to be turned upside down, and they were acknowledging it, which is kind of the classic problem of the preacher. Yeah. And that little paragraph is real interesting because I found this in my own life. There would be times that in the preaching of the good news, I felt very rosy glassed person, right? Yeah. That I saw the world through rose-colored glasses. And there's hope, there's power, there's freedom, there is the sweet by and by is ours waiting. But you would also turn around and decry the ills of society and the brokenness of our world. And I think that is a tension we live in as believers. Yeah. And he says, this preacher is saying, we should be a little bit of both, right? We have reason to be optimistic, but that does not mean that we deny the realities of the world and the brokenness and the chaos that is surrounding us.
Well, sometimes we have to preach from Jeremiah.
We need to be a weeping prophet every once in a while.
Maybe a little more than we
probably do. And I think we did in the years after 37. I think our theology did take on this way that if you acknowledged the bad things or the brokenness, or that somehow you were not being faith-filled. Right. And I think this is a much more balanced approach.
Yes. That's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah.
Great insights.
I thought it was interesting. They were already having trouble on the field. This may be what you were going to reference, Jason. I don't know. But they were making this appeal. Since some very unpleasant conditions have arisen at times through monies being sent direct from individuals to native workers, we find it better to send help for them to the missionary under whose supervision they're working. You see a lot of things happening there, but also you see structure building, right?
Yes.
You're seeing the DFM, then all AGWM structure of how we're going to approach funds that sometimes, and we still talk about this, it may not always be as helpful as we want it to be, because we're not always as attuned to realities on the
Sure,
field.
what the needs
Right.
are.
So it was
And
an
you know what? I
interesting
think-
development.
And this is born out of a conversation that happened off camera, but what's interesting here, and this is an early part of the organization, right? And so you see that the Division of Foreign Missions, I don't even know if it was called that
Probably
at
not.
that point. Yeah.
Not yet.
But the departments exist to serve the missionaries, to serve the churches, to serve the pastors. And all institutions will face changes in some of that structure,
Sure.
right? Where the local churches become more of a feeding entity for a headquarters. But that's what I really noticed too. There's an appeal, and throughout that whole section, there are appeals for these are what the actual needs of the missionaries and the national churches are in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not an appeal necessarily for giving, but that's implied in the text,
Right.
I think. But you get the strong sense throughout this that headquarters exists to serve the mission of the organization.
And those
Yeah.
doing the work out
yeah,
there.
exactly.
And we do have here the Foreign Missions Department. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Already.
Foreign Missions
Missions
Department.
Yeah. Well, the last two
Although
things
checks, I think, were still being sent. I think it was
To
in
Noel
yeah,
Perkins.
to his home address.
to Noel Perkins directly.
loved
I
that.
love that. The last couple things I would say very briefly, evangelists are putting out, hey, I'm available to have
Yeah.
services. The number one name on the list of under open calls was Lester Summerall.
Yes, I saw
Oh,
that too.
right.
I don't know if
Yes.
that name stands out to
Yes,
anybody else,
for
but
sure.
I grew up in northern Indiana,
Sure.
Mishawaka, South Bend. I have family members that attended Summerall's church. So seeing that in there was fascinating. He just returned from a tour around the world, it says. And then finally, miscellaneous notes. In a recent episode, we talked about an evangelist. She needed a tent.
Yes.
Was hoping somebody had a tent. Well, good news. According to the Evangel, there's at least 2 of them for sale.
right.
And I hope she got her tent.
I hope she did too.
Well,
Yeah.
Lisa, again, another great
Yeah,
article,
it was-
another
it
great
was.
edition of the Pentecostal Evangel. And all of these can be found at PentecostalArchives.org, the Pentecostal Consortium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just look Pentecostal
that's right.
Consortium.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's, again, make sure, comment,
Yeah, we
like,
love to
share.
have the
We
comments.
love
Love
the
to interact
dialogue.
with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week. Bye.